There's going to be an opportunity to ask questions towards the end of the webinar. We ask that you put those questions in the chat bar as they come up throughout the presentation. If you hover over the bottom, you can see the chat icon in the middle. And I will collate and summarize questions at the end, and then we will open for discussion. So today's topic is going to be led by Jim Spike. Jim has 46 years of engine experience at Pratt & Whitney. You would never guess that by looking at him. He is the former director of marketing for commercial engines. And his experience includes everything from advanced programs, performance and propulsion, flight test, and customer engineering. And his other responsibilities have included being an A330 program manager and working in business management. So I am going to hand over to you, Jim.
Well, thank you very much, Fiona. It's my pleasure to be here to talk about engine manufacturers and a look ahead. This will be an interesting presentation, I hope, and I can hope we can get a lot of questions at the end. The agenda for today. Can we get the next slide, Fiona?
Jim, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm just waiting for the next slide.
Oh, the agenda slide?
Yes.
That's showing on my screen. Isn't that not showing on everybody else's?
It's not showing on mine.
Addison, any?
No, not showing on mine either, Fiona.
Okay. What do you see, Addison? Do you see the engine manufacturers a look ahead slide?
Yeah, that's all we see.
Okay. All right, I'll stop sharing and try sharing again. What about now?
Got it.
Okay.
Okay. So for today's agenda, we're going to really talk about three things. Talk about the key players and the programs that are out there for engine manufacturers today. Just a quick overview of that. The future and new potential programs that are out there. And then at the end, kind of summarize and talk a little bit about key trends and issues going forward. Okay, good. So, you know, we start always thinking about the three major engine manufacturers or OEMs, whatever way you'd like to look at it, GE, Pratt, Whitney, and Rolls. But there are some other players in the field that we should be talking about and kind of foresee what the impact could be on them. Safran and MTU Aero Engines, big partners in a lot of the programs going forward. And so we'll talk about each of their players and their applications. So we'll start by talking about commercial, we'll go into military, and then we'll talk a little bit about aftermarket. But starting in commercial engines, this is kind of broken down so you can get a good look at the market, what's available out there for commercial engines now, narrow bodies, wide bodies, and regionals. And I think one of the big takeaways from this is this, if we start with the narrow bodies, you can see that GE and Pratt Whitney are pretty well placed there, along with Safran, of course, because they're a 50-50 partner with GE. But you can see in the narrow body business, Rolls-Royce really doesn't have any product in there right now. If we look down at the wide bodies, that changes a bit. In the wide body end of it, you can see that GE has, of course, significant entries there in the Boeing aircraft and the old A330s. And then you look at Pratt with the PW4000s, GP7000s. But if you look at Rolls-Royce, you can see they have the full Trent family is always in there on the A330s, A350s, A380s, and the 787s. So you can see a full family in their that's where Pratt Whitney really has mature products on the wide bodies. For regional aircraft, you can see there that that's the older regional aircraft are powered primarily by the CF-34s, and then the newer aircraft, the E-2s, MRJs, A220s, and Irkuts are all powered by the geared turbofans. And then you can see that there's one there for Safran with the Sukhoi Superjet. That's a partnership on the SAM-146. Okay. Now, just from a military engine standpoint, you can see that, just want to get you a quick overview of where we are there. Thank you. From the military engine standpoint, GE and Pratt, are pretty well set in the military end. GE primarily powering the F-18s, some F-15s and 16s, but of course heavy in the turbo shaft end of it for the helicopters, with the new announcement on the T-901, where they won the U.S. Army contract. And then the T-700 has been out there for some time, is really a workhorse for helicopters. Pratt Whitney with the F-135 engine, that powers the F-35. F-100s, they power F-15s and 16s internationally and within the United States Armed Forces, the F-119 for the F-22, and of course the TF-33. We'll talk about that a little bit later. That engine's been flying on the B-52 for a while. And then the B-21 Raider engine, that's the engine for the new bomber. So Pratt Whitney has that one. And then the F-117 from PW-4062, that's on the freighters, the C-17, and of course the KC-46. Rolls-Royce, you can see, is partners on the F-135 engine with the lift fan portion of it. But they do have a partnership in the EJ200s, RB199s, and of course the A400M aircraft with the TP400s. And Rolls-Royce, the T56, I think there's over 18,000 engines out there for the C-130, so quite a good market there for them. And Safran, of course, you can see them on the M88s and M53s. That has to do with the Rafale and the Mirage, and of course on the A400. So that market, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but that kind of outlines it for you. People are pretty heavy in there, so it looks pretty stable right now. Business and general aviation, I think what's important here is you can see the major three players in that, GE, Pratt, and Rolls. You can see under GE, one interesting thing there is the catalyst. I'm going to speak about that for a few moments. That's the new clean sheet turboprop that GE has come on the market with. Interesting to see how that will play out in the future. Passport, that's their new entry on the turbofan part of the business. And of course, the other engines there are sort of the mainstays for them. Pratt Whitney, well, it's the PT6, not much to say about that engine. It's been out there a long time. Good product, good dependable product. And of course, the PW800, 500, and 300, those are turbofan engines also on business, with the PW800 being the new offering out there. Rolls-Royce with its Pearl on the Global 6500 aircraft, the BR700, and the AE3007. So business aviation, that's kind of the footprint. I think we'll see the business aviation part of it slow down and probably pretty much flatten out for a while as businesses decide what to do with their business jets. Either put them down, not use them as much, so at least lower utilization, I would think, and probably some cost savings, some cost cutting for them along the way. So that market will be flat or falling off. One of the bigger things we want to talk about now is aftermarket. And aftermarket, of course, that's where a lot of people are involved, a lot of hands in the pot, so to speak. GE, Pratt, Rolls, Safran, and MTU all have their offerings by different names, but basically aftermarket services. This gets down to the business of jet engines and how they're made. It's really a razor and blade business, if you will, meaning you go out and sell the razor at a low cost, and then come out and sell parts, overhauls, and that's where you really recoup your investment over time. So really, there's going to be some impacts from the COVID-19 on this. And if you look at where those are, you can kind of split them in a few different areas. One is that aircraft will be flying fewer hours. Right now, very few hours, but even as they come out, they'll be flying fewer hours. So some operators in their aftermarket programs have power per hour. So an airline will pay X amount of dollars per hour to fly their engine, and that guarantees them a certain amount of maintenance. But that money won't be coming in, so that'll be a loss of revenue. Lower revenue also for shop visits. As airlines park their aircraft or store them or put them in the desert, whatever you'd like to call it, there'll be lost revenue there from less shop visits potentially. And of course, that gets into the early retirements. Let's say the 70-old 747s, even A380s now being retired. You'll see those. That'll cause less shop load and therefore less revenue for the aftermarket people. And then another side of this, of course, is cannibalization by airlines, meaning there's going to be aircraft parked out there with engines on them. They'll go out and take engines off wing potentially, bring them in and fly them till the end of life instead of taking the engines off wing for the aircraft they're flying and taking those into the shop. And that'll require less spare engines too. That's another part of this. So less spare engines will be produced because there'll be a good volume sitting out there. So that market will also be impacted by this. And along the line of cannibalization, if airlines will decide to start tearing down some engines that are being stored, then they could take parts off of that, out of those engines, and put those in the used serviceable material market. So that, I think, if this lasts long enough and gets bad enough, you'll see a lot of used serviceable material coming into the market. And if that's the case, that may offset new material by the OEMs. And that's either going to cause a couple things. The used serviceable material will be cheaper, potentially, so that may cause the OEMs to drop prices. I know they probably don't want to do that, but in order to compete, and that's what may have to be done. And if you even think one step further down the food chain, if you're a supplier of parts, I would think that the OEMs will be coming to you for cost savings eventually on the parts that you would supply to them because they may not be able to get their full catalog prices for some of these parts. So that's some of the background behind it. I don't know how it's all going to flow out, but I know for one thing, the cash flow will be a bit of a problem out of these programs right now. Okay, so on a rosier note, maybe we can go into the future programs. So I've listed on the left-hand side here some of the future programs coming up, which I think will still be active, but maybe at a little lower level, is not as quick. Maybe some timelines will shift. But we have the Rolls-Royce Advanced and the Rolls-Royce UltraFan coming up in the future. Those are two new programs, baseline programs that Rolls-Royce has been trying to develop new technologies on for a new technology three spool, and then of course the UltraFan at the end with the gear in the front of there. Second generation geared turbofans. I know there's been some work there for high bypass ratio engines, low fan pressure ratio to get after that propulsive efficiency even more. There's been work there. And then I foresee some GTF upgrades and potential LEAP upgrades as time goes on. That's sort of natural evolution of an engine. And then beyond there, supersonics. I mean, we have the Boom business aircraft right now that has the GE Affinity engine on it, I believe. And so that's kind of the beginning of supersonics coming alive again. That's being looked at, I know, for noise concerns and different types of things. So we'll see the supersonics maybe continue and move along. And of course, there's always hybrid electric. And that comes in a lot of different flavors, of course, from just a gas generator driving electrical generator to parallel to all different types of things. So I know most of the engine manufacturers are looking at hybrid electric. That's to reduce the carbon output. And speaking of that, I really don't think that lower emissions requirements are going to change, right? ICAO has their standards out there that by, I think it's 2050, will be half the carbon. So, I mean, that's still going to stay in place. And then from a military standpoint, we have 3 programs here. The Adaptive Engine Cycle Program, that's a fighter engine that's going to be able to transform itself from a turbojet to give you thrust to a bypass ratio engine, a higher bypass ratio engine to give you fuel economy. Both GE and I know Pratt Whitney have contracts with the U.S. Air Force on that. The B-52 re-engining, just this morning, notes came out that said the draft RFP has been given out. So I look forward to that. That'll be a good competition among Pratt Whitney, GE, and Rolls-Royce. That will be with current engines. I don't see any, there won't be a new engine developed for that. There'll be a commercial off-the-shelf engine. And then in Europe, the next European fighter engine is for the Future Combat Air System. So that's going to be a Safran MTU combination. So looking forward to that. So there are some things in the future to look forward to. But along with these future programs come the needs for technologies. So a lot of future technologies are going to be needed to support these programs, and some of them are obvious. Cooling technologies and material, right, for higher temperature operations. That goes along the lines of increasing the thermal efficiencies of the engines. There has been a lot of work on CMCs, but there's going to be other materials that are in cooling technologies and techniques that are going to be required to keep the temperature of the materials down. And then again, from a thermal efficiency standpoint, higher overall pressure ratio of the compression system. So you want to get high pressure ratios across your compressors. That drives your thermal efficiency up. So again, there will be materials and aero designs for a higher overall pressure ratio. Again, future technologies, geared fans, they're not going to go away. I think it's a great cycle and a great development. We'll see more geared turbofans with higher bypass ratios and lower fan pressure ratios to drive up that propulsive efficiency. And then part designs for additive manufacturers. You'll see parts being designed to keep additive manufacturing in mind. That drives down part costs, drives down materials, and in the end, you end up with a lighter, potentially lighter parts for additive manufacturing. I think there the hurdle will be being able to do large volumes of parts.
I'm on a call, I'm on a webinar.
Repair technologies, I think those are important. If you think about serviceable material coming out of the field, more repairs will be needed. I think more repair technologies will be used to repair those parts. So that's been an ongoing thing, but I think it'll maybe get a little more focused now. And then energy storage technologies. That really goes back to batteries and for electrification of flight, all the way from the urban mobility type, all the way up to the hybrids. So improvement in the energy storage capabilities. But the end goal will be fuel efficiency and lower emissions for these. And I think that goal probably will not change. Like I said, it's out there, but I think you'll find that the timelines may move a bit. And really just in summary, talking a little bit about key trends and issues. You know, the COVID-19 impacts will be serious, depending on how long they last. There's a lot of predictions out there as to how long they'll go. I'm not here to predict it, but I'm here to tell you that there will be some impacts on commercial, military, business aviation, and MRO. And if you think of commercial, it's going to be the lower production rates that we foresee coming out and that have occurred. A lot of those parts, though, commercial parts that were going to go into production may go into upgrades to existing fleets that are out there today, meaning, some of the high technology engines that are out there today, the Leaps, the GTFs, and the Trent 1000s. Good time to upgrade those fleets. So a lot of that material may go from production over to those areas. It won't be as high a level, but there may be some bit of minor relief there. Military, I really find that being strong. I don't see that being any different. I think the governments will support that. I think the US manufacturers are probably in a better position than the European manufacturers. But recently I had seen something about the next generation fighter engine in Europe, where the Germans were going to start ordering some Eurofighters potentially, some F-18s and some Growlers. So we'll see how that one goes, but I think that's a strong business. Business aviation, as I mentioned before, that's going to be a slowdown in deliveries and potentially a slowdown there in the aftermarket also. Commercial MRO, like I kind of mentioned before, that's really the cash cow for a lot of the engine manufacturers and suppliers. You're going to see a big reduction in shop visits, and the power by the hour revenues will be dropping. So in general, I think if you're a supplier, you should be based yourself on lower loads in that area. I think there's going to be some help there from the standpoint of maybe there'll be some consolidations. I don't know if that's helpful or not helpful, but I can see the supply base consolidating a bit at the lower tiers as businesses struggle. From the commercial standpoint, again, from a supply chain impacts, the same thing there. You're going to see the supply chain probably doing some condensing there also. So from a financial and future impacts, reductions in workforce we've heard about at a lot of the manufacturers already, lowering R&D budgets, and then really looking at technology programs, putting them under the microscope for review as to what can wait and what you need to do now for close term items. You can see the technology program recently announced for the E-Fan by Airbus and Rolls-Royce, a joint venture there. That demo was canceled, but I think the individual technologies will still live on and still be worked on. You'll see that the mergers and acquisitions will be on hold or slowing down. Most recently, of course, the Boeing Embraer has grabbed a lot of press from that merger. I think you'll see some other ones or really a lack of activity there, because everyone's trying to conserve cash right now, and they're not going to be buying businesses unless they have some cash to do it with. And then as far as future impacts, the ICAO carbon offset scheme is under review. That was a scheme whereby they were going to reduce CO2 by half by 2050. That final goal, I don't think is going to be changing, but the baseline that they want to strike with 2019 fleet data and 2020 fleet data to going forward, that's under review, I think. ISTAT has asked ICAO to review that and to see if they want to change the baseline, maybe only using 2019 data or some other way. So interesting things coming forward here to us. Next generation and new programs, I think we should keep an eye on those as we go forward in the 2030 type time frame. And but those are always the fun things to watch. So that pretty much ends what I have to say today. I look forward to questions and answers.
So we do have a few questions that have come up in the chat bar, Jim. Just going to share those. Okay, so the first question is, what is your view on the Airbus Rolls-Royce split on the E-Fan X program? Is this a setback for hybrid technology, or will we see it everywhere?
I think you'll see it elsewhere. This was just a demonstrator program. And there comes a point, where you have X amount of dollars to use. You want to determine how you want to use them from a technology standpoint, and E&D budgets are being cut back. So I think you're going to see a demonstrator somewhere along the line. I think it will be delayed. I know United Technologies or Raytheon Technologies was working on one also. But I think you'll see them come. I think they'll just be delayed, the big demonstrator programs, but the individual technologies, I feel, will still be worked on. Okay.
Then our next question is from Nico. How do you see the impact of Airbus becoming more Rolls-Royce centric and Boeing more GE centric?
Well, that's a good question, Nico, and nice to see you online. I think that'll change over time. I think you'll find that as the other engine manufacturers' products become a little more mature, I think you'll see them looking into not being so singular in what they go after. I know from a standpoint of the engine manufacturers, I'm sure they would like to be independent and only have one choice on an aircraft. But I think it's a time when there's going to be, I think we're going to see more competition.
May I ask, Jim, on what basis?
Excuse me?
On what basis do you think there'll be more competition?
Well, I think there'll be more competition because I think from the standpoint you'll see, I think all three engine manufacturers really have kind of a new product line. So they're going to be more competitive. And I think you didn't see more competition early on this because maybe the immaturity or the capacity of the engine manufacturers to be able to develop so many new products at once. So I think we'll see it change a little bit as we move into the future.
So could you see the OEMs actually going back to dual source rather than single source, despite the additional expense?
Yeah. I think the airlines would sure like to see it. They'd like to see dual sourcing on aircraft for engines. That provides a little bit of competition. But it depends on the market of the aircraft that you're talking about. If it's a small market for an aircraft like an NMA, there may not be room for two. So it all depends on the market of the airplane.
All right. Then our next question is with rotor technology. We're talking about open rotor technology. It is now expected for the 2030s, but will it?
Well, that's a good question. I know that open rotor technology has been around for a while. It has its positives and it has its negatives, as any technology does. I know that SNECMA had been working on it for quite some time. And I know that my days at Pratt Whitney, we used to be working on it also. I think it still has some technology hurdles and it still has some noise hurdles that it needs to get over. So I don't know if the industry is ready for it. That's always kind of been the question. Can it buy its way in from being a turboprop looking engine to not being a jet engine? I think the technology will probably be there. Is it something that might take the back burner now as time goes on because of lack of funds? I would think it would probably slow down.
The next question is from Ernie. Do you see the existing manufacturers supporting the urban air mobility market, or will new players emerge with the electric engine market?
Personally, I think you might see some new players emerge. It's the urban air mobility market is a little, there aren't so many roadblocks to get into it from a technology standpoint. I think the biggest roadblock is certification. And the certification will require some experience to certify. So from that standpoint, that would be the strong suit for the current engine manufacturers, of course. They know how to certify it and get it through the system quickly and get it through the system right. But I think you may see some new players come into the market
Ernie,
for
if I
the
hop
urban
in
mobility.
on that, I'm Tulinda Larson. I'm the UAM editor for Air Insight. And I agree with Ernie that there are going to be some new players coming into the market because they are predominantly electric. And so the electric motor technology is a different technology than the combustion engines that we're so used to. But each one of the current players has some toehold in doing hybrids in this marketplace. Forecasts for the demand for urban air mobility aircraft is as high as 430,000 aircraft between over the next 20 years, which is obviously a very large fleet that will need propulsion.
Yeah, so that's a big market, obviously. So you could get a lot of players. I think you're right about it being an easier market to get into, but there's always that experience and that certification item that we'll really have to see how that weighs out.
Exactly.
Yep.
Next question is from Addison. Given the high skills engine OEMs require, could the downturn mean an irreplaceable skill loss?
Well, I think that's why you're seeing furloughs and things like that occurring before you're getting large-scale layoffs. I think there's a concern that the skill will leave. I don't know where it's going to go, but the skill will leave and go somewhere else. So I think that's why everyone's trying not to pull the trigger right away on giant layoffs like we used to do that in the past. First thing you would do is lay off a lot of people. Now there's different ways, reduced hours, furloughs and things to try to keep the talent for as long as you can to weather the storm.
The next question is from Tom. In the medium term, what is the probability for consolidation among the engine manufacturers or a non-traditional unknown player coming in to acquire an existing manufacturer?
I think in the medium term, there could be a consolidation if there's a weak link in the field of the OEMs, but it will still require cash to do that, to buy it. So I think it's going to be difficult. I think as things improve, you may see a consolidation, but I would have to wait for a little bit, I think. Maybe that's what you mean by the medium term. Yeah, you could maybe see one more consolidation coming. Non-traditional or unknown player, there's such a hurdle to get into this business that unless it's going to be a financial buyout by somebody, I would say the probability of that is probably not too good. But that's just my opinion. I would love to hear other opinions.
Anybody want to add to that? Okay, our next question's from Mick. Do you see any of the big three being consolidated? So it's similar to the last question.
Right.
And I guess what I'm curious is who of the big three would you see being consolidated or merging?
Okay, so the elephant in the room would be Rolls-Royce, right?
No.
I might as well say it. No one else is going to say it. So the big elephant in the room may be a Rolls-Royce buyout, but it's just right now, I don't think anyone has the stomach for it, quite honestly.
I can't see the British government letting that happen, but maybe I'm biased.
Maybe.
Okay. Next one is around, so Tim Clark bashing engine markets last September for poor reliability and quality of their new technology engines. Have you been surprised by the number of difficulties both the GTF, Trent 1000 or LEAP have had?
Well, actually, as an engineer and being an old engineer, I'm actually disappointed in it a little bit that those engines performed the way they have. And I'm saying it for everybody. You know, we learned so much about how to test engines and do it properly. I think it's funny, you know, some of the technologies that people are having problems with didn't have to do with the newer technologies, so to speak. But I was surprised by it a little bit. I think everybody was a little surprised by it. And I think things are improving though. These engines are being matured and wrung out, unfortunately, for some cases on the back of the customers. But I hope we've learned lessons here again about how to design engines with reliability built in and the proper amount of testing for maturity. Well, the time will tell.
Then we have Nico again. Do you see a chance that the traditional rear-loaded business model may change to something more sensible, where engine discounts and spare pricing moves to a more sensible level?
Well, you know, there has been times I know where engine manufacturers have tried to sell at full price, but all the airlines, I think, like the other business model, where they get discounts up front and they can negotiate the MRO in the back end and try to manage it that way. Everyone would love to see the front-end loaded business model from an engine standpoint. I know military has that, and that's why engine manufacturers like to have military and commercial together, because in the military, you get paid more upfront than you do in the commercial end. So that helps the cash flow. So that kind of balances the companies. From the commercial standpoint, yeah, I think we've been trying to work on those business models for years, and not very many people have been successful on it. But there may be a future for it. We'll see.
And that is, oh, no, we've just had a new one come in from Michael. Do you agree that the recovery from the COVID-19 impact will first be led by the single aisle market? Will this restrict further innovation for the twin aisle market as growth in those areas is diminished?
Yeah, Michael, I think I have to agree that single aisle will, of course, lead it on the way out of this COVID-19 because of load factors. I think you'll see more regional travel than you'll see international travel to begin with. So I think the single aisle aircraft are better suited for that. Regional aircraft, I think you'll see being used a little bit in the markets as they open them up too. So you'll see a little bit of those aircraft come on too. I think as we go further on this, I think the twin aisle will eventually come out, and you'll see international travel go. I don't necessarily think it'll hamper innovation. It'll slow it down for sure as time goes on in the twin aisle market. Funny thing is, I think all the innovations are going to come from the military end now. You'll see a little swap. You'll see the military technical innovations really drive the technology budgets and lessen the commercial end. Hope I answered the question, Michael.
Okay, does anybody want to answer a question over the airwaves? Question from Ernie, how does military technology transition to the civil market?
Yeah, I know a lot of it has to do with the engineers themselves. You know, they work on commercial, they work on military, and a lot of that engineering kind of comes together with different ideas that come across. I think eventually you'll see from the military area, I think you know, historically, that's where the material technology was pretty much built up, which then goes into the commercial market. And then, of course, engine cycles. You see a lot of that difference. I don't know, adaptive cycles in civil aviation. Yeah, you never know over time.
The next question is around Cormac. Will Cormac have to rethink the CR929?
I believe the CR929 is the wide body one, right? Is that correct, Ernie? Yeah, okay.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that's the wide body application. And, you know, their economy was falling off. Travel was falling off in China. So I think they'll continue to work on it. I don't know if they'll rethink it. It's going to be about market and how much they want to spend on it and how much they want to do it. I think it's going to be the same as their regional jet and the same as their single aisle aircraft. It's got to be accepted by the West. You can only put so many wide bodies in China. The rest of them will go elsewhere in the world. So I think it's the same issue with their single aisle and their regional jets, but they always seem to have the energy and the financing to do it. So we'll see where that goes. I think you'll see it slow.
Okay. So if there are no more questions, I'd like to take a moment to thank Jim. It's fantastic to have you know, guest experts come in and share with us. We're going to be opening up a lot more to experts over the next month or two. So I'm going to ask Ernie to talk about next week, as we have something pretty exciting in store. Not Ernie, sorry, Addison. Addison, can you tell us about next week?
Hi, everybody. Yes, next week we have Eric Deschavan from Collateral Verifications, and he's titled his talk, The Great Reset of 2020, and it's going to be about valuations. And I guess there's no other way to describe it, but the collapse in valuations. And that has a very important impact for anybody in the supply chain or anybody who has assets tied up in the industry, because there is a tsunami of value readjustment coming. I guess it's in some ways it's more bad news, but then it's better that you know that this is coming and try and get ready for it and make adjustments as quickly as you can. So I look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for spending time with me today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Hello, Fiona.
Hey.
So the question is, how quickly can I get a copy of the recording, please? And then I need to talk to you about next week.
Okay, yep. So I'll download it right now.
Okay, excellent.
Okay. I also got a message from somebody, because I noticed we had 22 people on.
Yeah, I got 2 messages from people saying that it showed up as cancelled.
I haven't got one that said it showed up as cancelled. I was said it showed up as postponed. So I don't know if I got hacked or something.
Well, no, Eventbrite said was postponed for Norman Hecht, and Paul Finkelstein from Pratt said cancelled. question
So
mark.
weird. I didn't cancel it.
Of course you did. So
Just
anyway,
got
what
it.
we can do is I can respond to them with a copy of the link to the video, which is why I was asking for it. And then we'll take it from there.
Okay. All right.
Are you available sometime today for like 20 minutes, 15 minutes to go through planning for event 6?
Yeah. Can we do it right now?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
Well, we should jump off so you can get the recording and then you can send that to me. Then we can restart again. Because you can't, is it recording? Have you processed the recording now? Because it only processes when the call's finished.
Well, then I'll get off and let you guys do that. And
Okay,
Okay.
I'll chat with you later.
So
Perfect.
I'll stop and then we can get the recording because it takes about 5-10 minutes for that to download. And if you just jump onto my personal meeting room, that would be good.
Okay, can you just remind me, give the number, please?
I don't know my number. Save it in your phone.
I don't have it in my phone. Do I have it in my phone?
You should.
Let me have a look.
Give me a minute and I'll send you the link and then you can save it in your phone.
Thank you much. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Okay, bye.